All right, so I'm in Beaver Creek, Colorado for the Precious Metals Summit, and the only thing I can think of with the very little oxygen that reaches the very little of brain that I have at this, well, I believe it must be like 3,000 meters of elevation, which I suppose in U.S. terms is like 1,700 pickup trucks, 26,000 guns, and 16 bald egos. So the only thing I can think of is, can you imagine how much money must be wasted here? I mean, this is one of the biggest mining conferences of the year, definitely in the U.S., but potentially just in the West as a whole. And there's, I believe, officially 150 to 200 companies registered. But there's a bunch of more companies and company representatives here, just kind of roaming the city, the village, or the halls or whatever, just talking to people. And all of them spent money to be here, right? The hotels are incredibly expensive and stuff like that. And so I don't imagine it's possible for all of them to get their money's worth out of this. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask them. I've scheduled 62 or 64 meetings or something along those lines over the next 3.5 days. And so I'm going to need 17,000 liters of coffee. But I'm really hoping some of those companies are going to want to get in front of the camera and talk to me. I don't know if that's going to be the case, so it'll be interesting to see who and whether I get someone in front of the camera or not. But I'll take you along for the ride with me, as I always do. But Luke Hav is here too. Rick Roll's here too. Rick Roll puts on a conference himself, so it'll be interesting to see what he says about conferences. Hopefully I get him in front of the camera. So yeah, let's go on and see if I can get someone to talk to me. All right, Rick, we're standing here in Beaver Creek, and I've been going around being annoying to issuers, asking them, why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of it? What's your take on issuers spending money on conferences? Are they worth it? And I suppose, well, a little bit biased because you have a conference, but what's your take?
I think an exhibitor gets out of a conference what they put into it. I think too many exhibitors come to a conference, this one or mine, without a plan, without a sense of who their audience is, without a sense of what the pitch is to the audience. So my suspicion is that for most exhibitors, conferences aren't worthwhile. For those exhibitors who understand what they're doing at a conference, for those exhibitors who have targeted a market that they can access through the conference and have a plan to do just that, conferences are invaluable. Conferences allow the investor or whatever constituency that the exhibitor is after the chance to have a much more personalized pitch. It might be that you're after investors. This isn't as much an investor conference as an industry conference, but this is a wonderful place, as an example, to structure joint ventures or do something like that. But you have to come to this conference understanding who's going to be here. You have to come to this conference and schedule your one-on-ones. In other words, you have to come to this conference with a plan, just like you would have for any other business endeavor. If you do that, you will get out what you put in.
Do you, as an investor, ever get kind of, well, not angry at the company, but maybe disappointed when you see your share price going down, but they are going around the world and having a good time?
If they're just going around the world and having a good time, yes. What gets me angry at my conference is when I walk around the exhibit hall and I look at booths that don't have a company representative in them. It's really difficult for companies to make contact with investors if there's nobody at the booth to talk to. Yeah. And that drives me absolutely crazy. In fact, at my conference, I walk around with my phone and I take pictures of empty booths and I email them to the company's CEO and saying, you might visit with your IR person. You paid a lot of money for this booth and there was nobody in it. And the fact that your booth didn't perform is not my fault.
So how would you go about determining, like, if you were CEO of an issuer, how would you determine the ROI of because this is an investment, right? You want to get your money back, so.
No, absolutely, positively. When I was actively doing conference speaking, when I was, as an example, at Sprott, I looked at AUM growth as a consequence of the conference, and I would assign a 2% value. So if I added $1 million in AUM out of the conference as a consequence of new clients or capital addition from old clients, I would assume that the conference had made me $20,000. I had a much more granular approach to most other exhibitors whose methodology tends to be, well, I think I want to do this. How do I justify it? If I were an issuer exhibitor at this conference, I would determine before I wrote the conference check and set aside the time, what I hope to get out of this. Who do I want to meet? What do I want to accomplish? How will I measure whether my own efforts were effective? How will I measure what part of effectiveness I owe the conference, what part was a consequence of my own efforts, and tailor my conference strategy in that regard.
How do I do that as an investor when I'm invested in a company and they put out a tweet saying, oh, we're going to that conference? How should I judge it from a distance? Are they wasting my money or not?
Well, first of all, whether or not you have the discussion depends on the size of your investment. If you are a fairly small investor, there are other things that are probably more important for you to work on than the company's conference expenditure.
Okay.
Look, before you worry too much about how they spend the money, at the level of general and administrative expense relative to all expenditures. If the company's general and administrative expense in all categories exceeds 25% of capital raised, understand that either the issuer is substandard, in other words, they're too small to be public, or they're inefficient. Neither of those are good. Worry less about the conference expenditure and more about the level of total general and administrative expense relative to total expense.
The exploration to administration ratio is what I call it.
Yep.
Does that change with the parts in the cycle that we're at? Because it seems like not many companies are getting value for the dollars they're putting into the ground. So should they be spending more money on drilling now or more money on conferences? Or does that depend on the cycle?
Well, again, the answer is different than either of the choices you gave me. Most of the small companies shouldn't exist at all. They shouldn't be drilling because they aren't going to be successful. They're substandard. And they shouldn't be attending conferences because they shouldn't exist. If you start with the premise that there are 3,000 public companies in the world, ostensibly in the mining business, you come very quickly to the conclusion that probably 2,500 of them serve no useful purpose. And you as an investor need to very quickly separate the wheat from the chaff, find the 500 out of 3,000 that are worth worrying about, and then apply the strategies that you and I have talked about for years in terms of evaluating those 500. But the first thing to do is throw out 2,500 so you don't have to waste any of your time screwing with them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, understand now, just the compliance expense now is so high, it probably costs, if you're going to be compliant, $1 million a year to run a public company, minimum. If general and administrative expense has to be less than $25% of total expenditures, the company has to be investing $4 or $5 million a year in total. Many of these companies don't have $5 million market caps. The idea that they could spend enough to amortize the general administrative expense across a business, if their market capitalization is $2 or $3 million, becomes a non-starter. If you're going to invest in a $2 or $3 million company, you have to understand how you're going to scale that company to $10 million or $15 million very, very, very quickly. Or you need to use that money for a vacation or a nice dinner or something like that, you know?
Well, if it's not a vacation or a nice dinner that has a good ROI these days, what do you think has the best ROI in the sector now in this part of the cycle?
Good question. I've become sort of agnostic, really. I'm interested in the juxtaposition of price to value, and people are shying away from exploration, so I'm looking to fund exploration. I try to avoid where other people are. Most people in the business are trend followers. They try to find what's hot. They try to jump on it. They're hoping for a 3-month trade. And I don't like competing with what I would term the great unwashed. I look for hate. I look for trades like the trade that we talked about when we first met. When nobody wanted to be in the uranium business, there was an awful lot of opportunity for me in that space. I understood from history that the uranium price had to go up. So forward-looking, if you follow my thesis and you love hate, I'm starting to develop a reference library on sulfide nickel projects around the world. Market really hates them. They're all losing money. They're shutting them down. 2 years from now, that should be a pretty good sector. PGMs, everybody hates. You know, they had all this electric vehicle narrative and fuel cell narrative and all that kind of stuff. So people hate that because that didn't work. And the granddaddy of hate, I think 2 years out, is going to be lithium.
Okay.
Lithium was really hot, as you'll recall, when you were first coming into the business. And hundreds of millions of dollars were raised for lithium. And there was this wonderful lithium narrative, you know, the green future, all this hogwash, and it didn't work. The world was never short of lithium. We were short of lithium processing capacity. When the processing bottlenecks got resolved, the lithium price fell by 75% after a couple $1 billion got spent in lithium exploration. So there will be lithium projects that had $150, $200 million spent on them that will change hands for $5 or $10 million. When lithium is hated, when you look at the comments on your own YouTube channel, and people are suggesting lithium is a 4-letter word, that to me will represent the same sort of opportunity that I enjoyed in 2021 in uranium, or in January this year in the silver stocks. That's what I look for, really.
Is that what you're doing here as well? Looking for opportunities? Like, why are you even here? It's not like you need the exposure.
In my declining years, I'm 71. I understand the obligation to support people who supported me earlier in my career. And Jessica Leventhal and her late husband, Igor Leventhal, were important to my career when I was your age. And when Jessica reached out and said, you know, I'd like you to come back and speak at my conference again, I had to say yes. She was there when I needed her, and so I'm here when she needs me. There are other reasons too. The Denver mining community is very talented and less well represented than the Toronto or Vancouver mining community. And so there are people here that I see that are underappreciated relative to their Canadian peers, and the chance to see them in their own environment, see what they're about, see what role I might be able to play, is very useful.
You do have the Battle Bank, I don't know if the camera can see it, but you do have the Battle Bank shirt on. What's happening there?
Well, the world headquarters of Battle Bank is, of course, right here in Edwards, Colorado. The world headquarters, by the way, is a 12 by 12 rented office in a packaged office place. But Frank Trotter likes Colorado, and a bank is all about its people. And our key person is here. So that's useful. In terms of what's going on with Battle Bank, we are still fighting for FDIC approval, having achieved OCC approval very quickly. I think the next chapter in the history of Battle Bank is that we've signed an LOI to buy an existing bank, a very small bank, which we're buying really basically for the charter. Not like we want to be a rural Midwestern bank, but getting the charter, getting approval, in effect perhaps helping the FDIC, who doesn't like small subscale banks, will, we hope, eliminate the bottleneck that thus far has constrained us in a regulatory sense. In the other sense, the bank and organization is in very good shape. The waiting list to do business with us is approximately 15,000 people.
Oh, wow.
When we started EverBank, which you won't recall, but it was, we grew that bank from 0 to $28 billion over 14 years. When we started that bank, our customer backlog was 0. So we're starting this bank at about 15,000, including many of our former customers at EverBank. So in that sense, we're in very good condition. The backbone of the bank, the technology backbone, which probably cost us $15 million to build out at EverBank, is effectively done. So we're basically ready to open the doors. It would probably take us 60 days to get open after the FDIC said go. Okay. So we're hoping that we make the go decision for the FDIC easy, because we solve a problem for them.
And that's Rick Rule for Rural Investment Media and Battle Bank. Sir, thank you so much for investing your time with me.
Always a pleasure, and I hope that your subscribers remember that if they visit Rural Investment Media, they can list their natural resource stocks, and I personally will rank them 1 to 10, 1 being best, 10 being worst. RuralInvestmentMedia.com, list your natural resource stocks. Please no crypto, please no pot stocks, please no tech stocks.
Maybe they're going to ask you, or maybe they should ask you if those companies are wasting their money at conferences. Is that something you're going to tell them?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right, so I'm standing here with Luke Den Haave. Luke, nice to see you in person, I suppose, for once.
First time, man.
Yeah, not really, but...
Not the first time in person, but the first time on camera. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's, what I want to talk to you about is wasting money, which I suppose you're not too good at. I have a little bit of experience with.
I have experience enough losing money, so...
What do you think of this conference? Are issuers wasting shareholders' money by being here?
No, I think, especially this conference, I think has been really good for most companies. Full schedules. I think good investors, they try to keep all the service providers out, people trying to sell stuff in the meetings. So I really think that there was a lot of interest, and the market seems to turn a little bit. So I've only heard positive stories from companies and investors. So I really think that this is useful.
Well, but so for you, how do you determine that as an investor? Because I know you pay close attention to companies' spend. When you see them going to a conference, how do you know this conference is good and the other ones are maybe wasting money? Or how do you determine that?
Well, you will not often see a share price spike because of a conference, in most cases, or the company really has something going and they need to give the context to understand that. I just had a meeting with a company I heard about, but I didn't know the details. I listened to it, and I feel like, wow, I should almost buy this thing because it's they're getting results soon and it sounds promising, which is also dangerous in a way, right? Because you get excited, they promote you a little bit, of course, but it's really a good story. So I think if you tell that story 40 times in a week and you get 5 or 6 good investors from that, I think it's really worthwhile. And you never know. Sometimes you have to talk to companies, to people like 10 times before they get to invest. Sometimes a conference is not worth your money until the last guest and they puts in $1 million. So I really think companies need to do these things at a certain level. I mean, if they are a $2 million market cap that these funny companies we talk about sometimes, they shouldn't do it. But the ones more progressed, yes, I think they should do it.
Okay, what else do you think works looking at the market, the stage of the market where we are at right now? What should companies be spending money on outside of conferences?
I think it depends again on the stage and size. If you are, I mean, most people don't look at these $1, $2, $3 million companies like sometimes we do. Those companies should just, have a clean register, get the right investors early on and do the early work to show to people this is what we have. But if you are a $10 million or $30 million company and you have some drill targets and you need to also raise bigger capital, well, you need to find that capital. Unless you have Ross Beatty behind you or Lundin behind you, things become easier. And even then, they are here telling the story. I was quite impressed with Fireweed, even though I know the company for a long time. So I think conferences, interviews with you for sure, and I think in interviews is important because you want to inform people on a regular basis. I don't really believe in real campaigns in the sense that you get 20 YouTube videos in a row. Maybe it gets you a quick spike and you can raise money on it, but you're also diluting your quality share base a little bit, shareholder base. I believe in a quality shareholder base and not just trying to get 100 people in to get the price up to do a financing and the thing drops again. Mostly conferences, I think, interviews, most important. Yeah.
What else interests you when you look at these companies here? Is it drill stories that you think are going to work at this market? Is it PEA stage? Is it someone getting into production? What do you think is going to work next?
Well, the market seems to turn a little bit. And if you look at the majors, the seniors, they have been doing quite well, even though it doesn't feel to me like that because I don't own them. And of course, then it trickles down a little bit. I'm not really a developer investor because they are in a boring phase and they need a lot of capital. They will not have exciting news releases if they only have one project. So, but there are a couple of companies like Probe, for example. They really have a lot of ounces right now. They have a really good team and it sounds like a takeover target. So if you play that game, so I think for anyone there's some business. In 2016 and 2020, you really saw that trickle-down effect where the seniors started moving and then the somewhat smaller companies started moving. And then in the end, you see even these obscure $1, $2, $3 million companies that had no interest at all, they start to move because people want to have, they were too late, they also want to have the opportunity and then they go for those stories. So I think all of them will do quite well if the market turns, and if the market stays as it was, and like bad or sort of sideways, then you have to be really critical. I think always, but even more so critical in what you invest in.
I hope you've brought the list of the movers so we can go through it right now.
Right now, yeah, I can. I know all 100 of them here. No, we will do that next week. But there's a couple of interesting movers this week for sure. Even the big ones like B2 Gold, it is 9th biggest move in 10 years time. Core Mining, it is I think 5th biggest move in almost 20 years time. I think 15 years time. So if you see these big moves, it could hint that this is the early bull market, because often, also in 2016, you saw a couple of companies suddenly go up 20%, big companies. And you don't often see that. And typically in the early phases of a bull market. So I'm hopeful. You never know, but I'm hopeful that this is the turn.
You're not promising a bottom, are you?
I've done it once. I'm not promising it, but really putting it on paper. Like, I think this is the week. And I was right back then. And I promised myself never to do it again, because now I have that thing on, I can say that I did it once, but no, I think it has a good chance, but who knows. March was already quite good, right? Some companies did well since March, the producers, and maybe this is the moment when the smaller companies also will catch on, and they will also start to go up.
All right, so I'm back home, luckily, after it was an almost 24-hour trip door to door. So luckily back home now, and I'll move on to the company interviews here in a minute. I just want to remind you of the disclaimer. I want to remind you that you are watching a video that contains very high risk. Okay, so first of all, understand that. And second of all, understand that although none of the companies in this episode have specifically paid for the production of this interview, there are 5 companies in here that the names are on your screen right now that I do have a professional relationship with, meaning they typically pay for the production of their interviews. Okay, so that's number one. And although I don't make buy or sell recommendations because there's a clear conflict of interest, many out there will do. And so you should be aware of that inherent bias. That bias won't always be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company-specific content, including this one, just approach it with a dose of healthy skepticism and treat it as marketing. Okay, unfortunately, I'm not a magician. The guests here are not psychics, and some of the CEOs are even normal people. So we don't possess any superior knowledge about what's going to go up, what's going to go down, or what's going to go in circles. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies or all shenanigans, whatever it may be. Although you shouldn't tell my wife this, I'm not flawless. Matter of fact, they still have no idea what I'm doing. And I've only had facial hair for a couple of years now. I cannot even pronounce facial hair. So I also lack the experience. Okay. So please understand that there are going to be no guarantees that are going to be made here, besides that there will be forward-looking statements in these conversations. Those are conversations that are general and impersonal in nature, containing hopes for future events that may or may not take place, depending on many different factors, both within and outside of the company's control. Be aware of that. Be aware of the inherent risk to investing and the increased risk of investing in non-revenue generating companies that are operating in the harsh reality of the mining industry. And please talk to someone who's proven to you to know what they're doing, and like a professional investment advisor, as well as do more research before taking any decisions by visiting sitterplus.ca, where you find the company's official filings. If you don't do all that, you're highly likely to lose your money. There are disclaimers on your screen right now. Again, if you don't enjoy losing money, read them and be careful out there. With all that said, though, I'm going to shut up and let you listen to the CEOs. Right, I'm standing here with Andrew Chubb of Awalé Resources. Sir, why are you here? How do you see the return on investment to coming all the way here from Malta?
We're here for profile. So we've arranged 47 meetings over the time. So that's roughly 15 meetings a day. So it's a pretty busy schedule. And thus far, all those meetings have been good ones. And I guess the key thing for us is profile. So making sure people are aware of Awalé, aware of what the story is and what the opportunity is. And, that is in turn keeping interest in the company. And, if you have been watching our share price at the moment, we've been reporting good drill results. We're really happy with the way the project's going, but, effectively we're creating negative liquidity events. So, if we could get some support on market, this is the kind of place where we can sort of push our wares or talk about our wares and the project and where we sit and what the, I guess the good parts about the project are and where we're going and where we're headed and that it's a good opportunity to get into the company. So I think it's really, this part of our marketing is an extremely important aspect.
Last time I looked at your share price, it was 47 cents and you have 47 meetings. So maybe next year you book like 120 meetings?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how we go. But yeah, it's a really good conference from that perspective. There are a lot of people here, and they're the people that we need to talk to. So, we do a lot of online things as well, yeah. and talk to people, do interviews with people like you. But this is another important aspect of company profile and making sure that we're getting seen by the right people, because not everyone actually follows things on the media. They want to meet people face to face and understand who we are as a team, as well as who the project is.
Yeah, some of the other companies I spoke to, they told me there's also a strategic element to it, like they talk to larger mining companies or other juniors that they might have synergies with. Is that even possible with you, with Newmont's involvement into the story?
Oh no, it definitely is, and we have meetings with mid-tier companies, other companies that are looking to, project acquisition as well, and all those sorts of things. So, outside of somewhere like this, you wouldn't necessarily come across those people and talk to those people, and you can talk about what their strategy is moving forward, and like where Awalé will be, in the next 6, 12, 18 months, and how that fits in with their strategy as well. It's really important stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so the ROI, I mean, when people online say, oh, the stock price gone from 80, 90 cents to 47, and these people are going to conferences, what's the ROI in that? You say positively, that's positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not necessarily going to show today or in the next couple of months even. It's just, giving us optionality in the future of where the company's going and how we finance what we need to do.
Right. Well, speaking of ROI, you also just made some key hires, rehires, dare I say? What's the ROI in that? How do you see that?
Oh, look, having the right, we're a strong technical team in place is what leads to discovery. So, in short, having these, like Andrew back is a coup, but getting John and Kermit on the project as well is, if it's there, we'll find it on our 100% Awalé ground, but also ensuring that we've got the capacity to keep pushing the joint venture project in the right direction. It's, there's going to be a lot more drilling on the joint venture project over the next, between now and the end of 2025. So, you need to have the people in place to actually handle that. We had to increase capacity, right, to handle our greenfields and brownfields exploration. So we've absolutely now got the right team in place. And on top of that, on the corporate side, having Artem, Artem is comes from a corporate finance background and really adds a lot to the team from that corporate finance perspective, that commercial perspective of the company, and all those sorts of things as well. So, and also now at Freeze, I've been wearing too many hats. So when you're wearing too many hats, you put things to the side, and it takes, you've got to turn around and come back to them. And so now, I've got time to focus on the things that I need to focus on as the leader of the company. So it's really happy with those people coming back on board. It's fantastic.
The topic of ROI with you specifically is interesting to me because the type of company that you are has changed dramatically over the last less than a year, I suppose, or about a year. Let's call it a year. You went from sort of a nano cap to now a very serious discovery. Where do you go next? Like, where do you put money from here on out to get a good ROI?
For us at the moment, like for the Awalé money, it's developing the 100% Awalé part of the projects. And that's a focus for the Awalé money at the moment. But also, we've got Newmont who want to, reach their decision milestones about where they are and where the project's going, and we've got fantastic discoveries, and we need to sort of push that towards, is it a Newmont scale project or isn't? So, they're the things that are going on at the moment. But for Awalé, it's the 100% Awalé ground. That's the focus for that Awalé.
Okay. What's the budget again? Remind me, how much is Newmont spending on the joint venture and how much are you spending on the 100% stuff?
So the Newmont earn-in was 15 million. We're sitting at 7 million now of that spend. So we're nearly roughly halfway. And we are looking to spend between now and the end of 2025 the greater portion of that remaining 7 million on the project. So there's no guarantees on that. We haven't had our strat for 2025 with Newmont yet, but I know that they're keen to push the project forward. They don't want to sit around and wait either. So that's a good sign for us because that's a win-win. We get to really get in and do a lot more drilling between now and the end of 2025.
What does Newmont think of the recent results? You just published some last week. What are they telling you about that?
Happy because BBM we have increased that core zone, so we still have that 1.3 kilometres of mineralisation in that drill zone, but we've increased that core zone from sort of around 400 metres to over 600 plus metres now. It appears to be increasing with grade, with depth, We're still getting nice wide intervals at depth, which is good from a mining perspective as well. So they're happy with that sort of things, and they're also happy with the follow-up drilling we've done at Charger. So Charger is a little bit more, like I always say, BBM's this nice tabular ore body, Charger's not. So the drilling that we've done is helping us unravel that 3D geometry, and it looks like we can start to join together things over a broader strike, which increases volume. And we already know that when you've got that right at Charger, the grade is there, can be there as well. So everyone's pretty chuffed with the drilling that we've done in that last 6,800 metre program, and hopefully the last 6 holes we got to report, we should have some interesting things to report from that too. I hope so.
Yeah, that news release said you have 6 holes to report, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that 4 Charger 2 BBM, or what was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got 2 deeper holes at BBM to report, and then a series of deeper holes at Charger to report as well. And I can say that one of those deeper holes at Charger has intercepted the breccia at depth. The mineralisation doesn't look to be as strong, but we know that when we're in the coarse breccia, like where you've got big clasts, the mineralisation's not as strong. But the point is that we've actually got a target point that sits roughly 200 metres below the current drilling that we've done. So that really helps us out with that 3D geometry. And we know that when you move a little bit with your drilling at Charger, you can go from almost nothing to something really, really significant. So that's cool as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Those 2 holes at BBM, that's hole 100 and 102?
I think 99.
Okay.
99 is the one that got the large interval of breccia.
Okay. When do you think that's coming on?
Well, hopefully, in the next month or so, it should 4-6 weeks.
Okay.
But let's say sometime in early to mid October, I hope. Yeah.
Right, but so the whole topic for me at this conference has been a lot of companies are building value, they're finding value in potential deals here for later on. Not a lot of it is getting reflected in the share price. With you in Côte d'Ivoire, it's kind of currently the rainy season, so after you release these 6 holes, are you going to have enough news flow to keep the market happy?
We have done some initial work on the some of the 100% Awalé, so hopefully we'll have the geochem results through from that we can report as well. But we'll start up drilling hopefully in October, hopefully early October if the rains sort of stop in time. So there'll be a lot going on for the company to keep the market informed of through that time as well.
That drilling that's coming from Newmont, what is that, 20,000 meters I think that they're financing for the next drill program, or the upcoming one?
So we got 8,000 metres of air core slated, and then at the moment it's another 4,000 metres of RC, and that's on top of the previous drilling that we've done this year as well. So we're still on track for that roughly 25,000 metres of drilling for this year. And maybe, like, we never know, we don't know now, but hopefully we get a bit of a budget extension and maybe we can drill a few more diamond holes than we planned as well with a little budget extension for 2025.
Can you give me sort of a rough outline on percentage-wise, where's that meterage going to go? Is it mostly BBM focused, or are you doing something at... Well, I've kind of been selfish on Lando myself. I know the internet doesn't talk too much about it, but I know you like it.
So, look, Lando is the biggest footprint geochem anomaly that we've got on the project. So the intent is there'll be RC fences, big, long, we call them system fences, that go all the way across that big anomaly to try and work out where the source of that big anomaly really is and where we should be focusing, more drilling and deeper drilling at Lando. So the initial couple of holes we drilled there, we feel like we're not quite in the right spot, and the anomalies continue stronger out to the east, and that's where those fences will go out across.
Okay. And again, that's all paid for by Newmont. You have your own... Oh, I saw someone said or commented online something along the lines of when you announced that you're coming to Beaver Creek, someone said, "Oh, I hope they're not doing a push to raise more capital." No, that's not how I understand it. But
that's like I said, that's not why we're here. We're here to keep the profile of the company there, and introduce the story to new people, but we've got we've got $10.5 million in Canadian in Treasury right now. There's, we've got plenty of runway to keep working our 100% projects, keep spending Newmont's money, and keep, the whole idea of what we want, building the company, right? And creating value for shareholders through building the company. That's what we want to do.
All right, so I'm standing here with Taj Sin of First Nordic Metals. Sir, why are you here? What do you want to get out of this conference?
This is a really well-known conference, usually very well attended, and it's just really a chance to reconnect after the summer with peers and investors and everyone together, and get people updated on companies, updated on the sector. So it's been good.
Well, how do you determine the ROI in something like that? Because it costs you money to come here, register and all these things. How do you know you're getting your money's worth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thinking about it is, say it costs $10,000-$15,000 or so per person per company to come here. If you all in consider it and you put in some contingencies and things like that for extra costs, and you think about if you even meet 1-2 investors who really get interested in your story, with the way the market is and the fact that it's actually, it looks like there's something coming strong in the market here, everyone getting together. I mean, it's hard to put a price on it, but even if, you get one new investor, can you think about the ROI is 100x, 1000x, right? So I think it's a very high probability of a very positive ROI, and sometimes the ROI can be very, very high.
Do you think it could do something for your already existing shareholders too? As in, a lot of people are looking at the screens, share price going down, but they see companies spending money on like conferences and stuff like that. Maybe they're asking themselves, is this going to benefit me in any way? For
the investors?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, I think so. And listen, our story specifically, I can speak to that, and we've heard some very good kind of feedback on that, is we've had a very good summer. Our stock price has moved up nice, and a lot of guys have come down recently. We've stayed very strong. Share price overall in the past 6 months has moved up very strong. Liquidity's high. So we've luckily been one of the success stories, and I think we'll hopefully continue to build on that. But I think for investor, phone calls, Zoom calls are great and amazing and an efficient way of saving money, but there's just something entirely different, I think, when you're in person, which is great to see, right? There's so many more ideas, thoughts that can be shared. Even going through a plan map of a proposed drill program right in person, it's just a lot different than doing it over Zoom. So I think that's a huge benefit for investors, and a lot of the stuff it's hard to tell, on conference calls, etc. But in person, here's what's happening, here's the situation, here's some background on this situation for various stories. It's just very helpful to have it in person.
What else do you think is good ROI for the story right now? When I say ROI, I don't necessarily mean creating value for the company, though obviously that's important, but what's going to create share price moving news? What else do you think you can do?
For us as a company? Well, we are very active on the ground now. It's a story that kind of was relaunched in March 2024, First Nordic Metals, after the merger of Goldline Resources and Barsley Minerals, and effectively the project was on maintenance mode, hibernation. They had the project called the Barsley Project, which is a joint venture with Agnico. Agnico was moving on that project a little bit slowly, but now to this story you've added, almost 50, 60 times the amount of land, potential prospective land on the same belt that you had before, and now we're working. We've got full teams out there we have a geophysical program happening, we have fall drilling happening. So on multiple projects we're working, and I think people need to see you're busy, put the money to work and put it into the ground, and I think that's where you can drive some real ROI.
So what exactly are you doing, putting the money in the ground? Talk to me about budgets, timeline, these releases.
So we recently released a press release on Monday giving an update on one of our projects. That's the Storjuktan project. We have a geophysics program happening over that project. There is already a target that's ready for BOT drilling, base of till drilling, BOT drilling, which will then prepare for diamond drilling. So I think probably by early 2021, maybe kind of late Q1 2025, 2021, they'll be ready for drilling. Our second project, the Paubakken project, is ready for diamond drilling. There'll be a little bit of BOT drilling we are going to finalize over the next few months and plan to drill that again in Q1 2025. And there's another project we're going to be doing, a very interesting target also on the Goldline belt in Sweden called the Klippen project. We'll begin BOT drilling that in October. So we have the potential of 3-4 targets getting ready for diamond drilling. Kind of first phase 0 diamond drilling programs on these projects, and a lot of information has been put together on these in terms of geochemistry, geophysics. They've been really well kind of set up for diamond drilling. So it's very exciting. And all this preparation work is also, these are incremental positive catalysts as you move your project towards diamond drilling, and you can really start seeing, okay, this is looking very interesting. So that's what we're doing for First Nordic.
What about the timeline on the news release of that? So you're starting the work in October, you said.
Correct.
6 to 8 weeks after that, or like how are you seeing the news release and the news flow?
Yeah, so I'd say at least every month you're going to have a news release because we have multiple projects going. So if it's not one project, it's the other. I'd say at least every month you're going to have a news release on some exciting technical results from our projects, all the way probably over the next 6 to 8 months, and hopefully even beyond.
And the money that you have right now covers all that, so you don't have to raise capital before you've had more news releases, or how do you see that?
Correct. Yeah, we're the program I talked about. We're fully funded to take this into 2025. We did a pretty creative and interesting thing. Instead of raising money at kind of lower prices in the summer, we incentivized some existing warrants that were well in the money with existing shareholders, and we were able to raise close to $4 million Canadian that we brought in. And it was great. It allows us now to push well into 2025. At the appropriate time, you have to fund the company to continue doing more and more, but it gives us a nice buffer of being able to get work done, hopefully have some kind of valuation change and re-rate, and then do something at the appropriate time. So we're in a good position there.
In terms of marketing, are you doing something else? Other conferences? I heard there's one in Europe that's going to happen close to home for your project. So are you going there? What are you doing?
Yes, no, we're very excited. It's the inaugural Nordic Mines and Funds Conference in Stockholm, Sweden. We're one of the speakers there. There's about 30 companies coming there. Some of them are European-based, some aren't. They're just looking to get access to Scandinavian investors. I'm very excited. Obviously, Sweden and Finland are home to us, so now having investors there who can learn about projects in their own country is going to be great. And I really do believe there's a significant amount of capital in Northern Europe, specifically Europe throughout, but significant amount of capital for good management teams, good projects. They're just waiting to learn about the projects. And what I like about ours is it's from where they're from, and they love to support projects that in places they live, etc., and or nearby places. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And then in Florida, at the end of October, there's another conference run by a firm called Top Shelf, which is a smaller kind of retail conference, but very good kind of 15, 20 key select companies coming. And that is going to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in October. So going to continue to get out there for conference season and get the word out.
All right, so I'm standing here with Matt Manson of Radisson Mining. Sir, this is kind of a change story. I suppose this is your first time as the CEO of this company at a conference, but why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this?
Well, Radisson's a company that's been around for many years, and I think people have a certain sense of it. It's a company that explores and drills the O'Brien Gold Project in the Abitibi, and it's been doing that for several years. So there's been a bit of a reboot that's gone on here. I've come in as a CEO. The board has changed quite substantially. People with mine building pedigrees have arrived on the board, and that's because we're viewing the future here. We see O'Brien as a project that's stepped up a level at this stage, and it's an important opportunity to educate our existing investors and potential new investors as to what's happening. And on Monday morning, actually, just in time for this conference, we were able to press release that we had a memorandum of understanding with IM Gold, who are one of our neighboring companies with the Doyen Mill beside the Westwood mine, and we're going to collaborate over the next few months on a technical assessment of our ore going to their mill. So that's a bit of a surprise and maybe a sea change in the eyes of many of our shareholders, and the response has been very good, I have to say. Share prices responded well, but really it's educating people as to where we're going directionally. That's the opportunity.
How do you determine the ROI in something like this, though? I mean, you're spending money to be here, obviously, so how do you know you're getting your money's worth?
And that's a really difficult thing to assess. I mean, some people would say the more communication, the better, right? What's the limit? You want to have a relationship with your investors. You want to give them regular updates. You don't want to take their money and then leave them alone. So Beaver Creek is a very efficient way to actually see a lot of people. We've had, I think, 45 meetings here over 3 days. So that's, and of all types, existing shareholders, new shareholders, corporates who are all here as well, the banker and brokerage community. It's important for the sales teams to understand our story because they're talking to other shareholders. So put that all in the melting pot. And this is actually quite an efficient dollar spend, especially if you're in North America already and you can come down on a direct flight.
Yeah. Who are you meeting on the corporate side? Is this kind of an M&A type of thing, or like who are you meeting?
Well, in Quebec, gold mining, there's a lot of companies. So we're seeing most of them. Again, we've been on the radar screen for most of the existing gold producers in Quebec with the O'Brien project. So I think we're seeing, everybody probably. It's an efficient way to see those people. Denver Gold Show next week these two conferences are scheduled to be back to back. If you do the whole thing, you've seen everybody possible in the universe. We're just doing this week. We're just doing 3 days here at Beaver Creek. But yeah, I think the corporates all have their corporate development teams down at this conference. Next week for those guys, they are focused on talking to their shareholders at Denver. Smaller companies like us this week are talking to shareholders and talking to those corporates.
Speaking of ROI, how much money do you have left in Treasury right now, and what are you spending it on in order to... And when I say ROI, I'm not talking about only increasing the value of the company, but actually making the market realize that value, as in moving the share price. So how much money do you have? What are you spending it on?
$6 million in the Treasury at the end of June. That was our last quarter and a public number. $4 million of flow-through dollars, which are dedicated to our drilling, 35,000 meter drill program that's ongoing. $2 million of hard dollars, which is covering our fixed costs. Everything we're doing right now is fully funded. So whether it's the collaborative technical work with IM Gold towards the Doyen Mill, what might come after that, which is we conceive of a preliminary economic assessment to build upon that and show what the project looks like in that scenario, and also the drilling, that's all taken care of with the $6 million.
Okay. How long is that going to take you to complete that drilling?
Well, we're gonna probably be complete with the 35,000 meters end of this year. Drill results flowing in the weeks and months kind of coming after that. So quite a lot of news flow from us on that drill program between now and, say, end of the first quarter next year.
Okay. What about in between? What happens in between? I mean, is this kind of the time where you want to keep the market engaged and happy? Everyone's back from vacation. Gold's at an new all-time high today. Stocks are moving, so how do you keep the market engaged in the meantime?
Well, I think good question. I mean, the natural flow of our business lends itself to drill result press releases every few weeks. But under this technical work we're doing with IM Gold towards Doyen, we're doing quite a comprehensive metallurgical program, which we've announced with SGS in Ontario. Ausenco are helping us with that. And that's actually going to produce some interesting questions. So a lot of answers to the questions a lot of people have had about our deposit over the years. Sure, there's lots of ounces there, it's high grade, we see the morphology of the deposit, but what's the metallurgy, right? You're talking about sending it to other people's mills, can they take it?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a focus on that side of our business now over the next few weeks until the end of the year. That'll form part of our disclosure as well. So I think there's quite a lot of stuff happening at Radisson, and I think we can keep the market quite engaged.
Are you going to change something about the way that Radisson markets? Are you going to go to different conferences? Or are you going to change something in the approach as the new CEO?
I don't think so. We're doing conferences like this. There are other conferences through the fall that we'll be attending. There's one Quebec City we'll be attending. Yep. We're doing the Red Cloud Showcase in Toronto during that time as well. We're running the business at the same time. My CFO, Hubert Parent-Bouchard, has got very good relationships with shareholders. 35% of our shareholding is actually 35 individual people in the Rouyn-Noranda region, in that community close to our project, high net worth individuals, people involved in the mining business who have been investing and following our story for a long time. Dialogue and communication with that group is very important to us as well. So I think the communication, the outreach takes a number of different forms. We're a small team, right? There's a business to run, there's communication to happen, and I think the balance is about right.
All right, so I'm standing at Beaver Creek at the Precious Metals Summit with Dr. Ian Webster. Sir, why are you here?
We're here because it gives us a lot of exposure to institutional accounts, to corporates, and it's a very good place, or a very good opportunity that brings the whole exploration community together. So over the course of 3.5 days, we get, I don't know how many meetings we've got, probably 40 or 50. Our schedule's jammed from 8:30 in the morning through to 4:30 in the afternoon with back-to-back 25-minute meetings. So you get a lot of bang for your buck, basically.
So when people online say like, oh, these companies are just wasting my shareholders' dollars on this and other conferences. You don't agree with that?
No, not at all. I mean, I think these are very good opportunities to build relationships, and arguably a lot of this industry is relationships. I mean, and you can't do that without having a physical presence. I mean, if you're on Zoom, sure, you can give a good overview of the project and give people a sense of the direction you're going in and what you're forecasting for the year, but there's no chit chat outside of that. You don't get the opportunity to kind of talk about people, what they were doing at the weekend, where they're going on holiday, and just the little bits, I think, that really help build confidence in the individual to kind of execute on whatever it is they're doing in the program. And obviously the company, and obviously these are large sums of money that people are looking to invest, and arguably they're investing in the people and the team as well as the assets. So building those relationships, giving people confidence that you're going to be able to execute on what you say you're going to do, I think it's critical, and you just don't get that as much over Zoom or Teams.
How often would you say that happens, though, that you meet someone here and then something material for the company happens, like an investment comes in, or maybe there's a potential for whatever, M&A down the road or other partnerships? How often do you think that happens on conferences?
All the time. And often it's pretty hard to quantify exactly what that is. There's never a dollar amount. Sometimes some investors will tell you that they've taken a position from this, or they've put X amount of dollars into the company. That's rarer, so it is a little harder to quantify, but I'd say we're talking about return on investment. For what it costs the company to come to these conferences, you easily pay that back by the meetings that you have, the relationships you build, and the opportunities it provides.
Talking about paying and money, how much money are you left with now in the company?
We've got about 16 million in the treasury at the moment. Obviously, active exploration ongoing on the project at the moment. 2 drill rigs going on the ranch project. We're looking at wrapping up the baseline work this year as well, and we're completing all the on-site geotechnical, hydrogeology, geochem test pits for feasibility level studies that are going to come in 2025.
We just talked about this, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, but what are you going to do with that money that is not only going to create value for the company or add ounces or improve metallurgy, whatever else it might be, but that's actually going to move the needle for the stock price? Because that's what investors want to see, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's twofold. It's one, coming to these conferences and really educating the investment community on how far the project's come, what the outlook is for the next 12 months, and what the potential of the project is ultimately. And then we kind of couple that with digital marketing, with interviews. And it's obviously, that's a fraction of our budget. The lion's share of the dollars that we raise go into the ground. And as I said, right now that's all exploration, drilling, plus baseline work, plus engineering work that continue to de-risk this asset as we move towards a production decision.
How much of that money that you have right now are you budgeting for actually going into the ground versus what you're going to spend on G&A and conferences and marketing and so on?
So our G&A for the year is about 3 million. And we have a pretty significant team at this point, and obviously with all of the various elements of studies that we're doing, it takes a lot of educated, skilled people, both in the office and on site, to turn the project into what it is. And then our budget for the marketing budget is kind of in flux at the moment. We're transitioning, so I don't have a great number for you there, but as I said, the lion's share of the money goes in the ground.
Right. Okay, so what are the next couple of news releases that you're expecting, when you're expecting them, and what are we going to see in them?
I think you're going to see drill results coming from both the Lawyers Project and Ranch, and that they should start coming out to market probably late September.
All right, I'm standing here with Gerald Paneton. Gerald, thank you so much for investing your time with me today. We're here at Beaver Creek, and there's been a lot of comments recently about there being too many conferences and there not being a good enough ROI on conferences. So why are you here?
Well, it's very simple. Yes, there's way too many conferences. We get invited probably once a week to a total of 40 conferences. You just have to be very selective. You have to look at who's going to be at the conference, which people will attend. But Beaver Creek has been running for almost 20 years. It's always been a premium a very prime conference to come because of the number of people attending the Beaver Creek conference. For us, the rate of return has always been very good.
How do you determine that? That's an interesting point, the ROI, because I don't know exactly how much this one costs, but typically conferences will go you like 10, 20 grand. How do you know what the ROI on it is?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, if you have a chance, for example, any public company that is listed that has, you know, a project and wants to promote its project, wants to talk about its project, and show the value, it's undervalued. Look, I still remember the days of Detour when I used to come just to the Denver Gold Show, but our staff was coming to Beaver Creek to look at the next acquisition. For a lot of company, Beaver Creek is one of the best place for all the producer, gold mainly and others, to come here and evaluate project and talk with management. It's also an occasion for existing shareholders, to recoup, and instead of doing marketing extensively, they come here and they have a chance to meet with 20 company they own or 30 company they own. There's no question that Beaver Creek or the Precious Metals Summit in Beaver Creek is one of the top junior conference, no question.
How many people are you meeting here?
I've got approximately 40 meetings this week.
So you're not sleeping, it's just 24/7.
No, no, but on top of those 40 slot meeting, I could probably still take a few more, but I also mingle. Like last night I had a meeting for 2 hours with someone. So there's a lot of networking happening, whatever it's at breakfast, at lunch, during the day. When you've known and been involved in this industry for a number of years, you get to know so many people. In my mind, Beaver Creek is never a miss, and there's a huge waiting list, just to think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so here, that's a good point. When you meet people, you just talk about value. You think your company is I suppose, like most people out there, they think their company is undervalued. The market's giving you a price. When you talk to people in these meetings, what do you tell them to help them realize that value?
well, there's two things. I think the market, you may think that it's pricing everybody accordingly to the real value. In reality, the market is just a reflection of the current economic situation. I think look, there's a disconnect currently between gold price at $2,500 an ounce and any other company involved in the producing sector, the mid producer, and also the junior. It's 20% to 90% discounted to the value. Gold Terra is currently valued with its current resource of 1.8 million ounces combined at less than $10 an ounce. But I'm not the only one. Now, it's all about, you know, what do you do next? What is your plan for the future? Do you have a plan? I was talking to a friend yesterday, and the guy has a market value bigger than mine, and he has 0 ounces. 2 showings, a little bit of money in the bank, and he's got a market cap of $20 million, $30 million.
Well, isn't that telling you what the market wants? They want excitement. They want discoveries.
Of course, but
How do you
without
deliver
money,
that?
without money, without support by the market, you can't go anywhere, and it's harder to raise money. Look, for a person who raised $2.6 billion in less than 5 years at Detour to build the largest gold mine in Canada, to today's market, I wish I would have almost never come back in this situation because the market is a killer. However, eventually it will turn because there's a huge disconnect. Like gold production is difficult, more expensive to produce. The average is probably $1,500 to $1,600 US an ounce, all in. But you still have a margin of $900 an ounce.
Sure.
And the disconnect, I perceive, my own interpretation is that the gold price is high because people are buying physical gold. But where does it come? Where does the physical gold come? It comes from the producer.
Yeah.
Because people, once they own gold, they don't sell it. They keep it.
Yeah. Comes from a hole in the ground and then goes into another hole in the ground. What is
a different one.
what is your? You said, do you have a plan? That's what you think is important. Well, do you? What's your plan going forward?
Our plan is very simple. We have a very good high grade asset, and with the extension we just got from Newmont, and it's open for, if we want another extension, we will get it as well. We're probably the best party to acquire the coal mine on Newmont perspective. And I firmly believe there is million ounces to be found and demonstrated. It's just a matter of drilling them. Now, some of them are deep, but don't forget we have almost 600,000 ounces near surface, south of the mine, that can cover the first 5 years of operation. Plus what we're trying to find below the mine. Plus controlling 70 kilometers or 50 miles of the Campbell Shear that produce already 14 million ounces over just 5 kilometers. So think about the potential. It's like we control the land between Timmins and Madison or Noranda to Val-d'Or. And we're the sole owner of one of the best greenstone belt in Canada that remain to be explored. So the potential is there. It's just if the money supply was better, I would get a lot more discoveries.
Do you want to remain the sole owner of this, or do you think you can get a partnership with another company? I know the involvement of a major with you makes it challenging, but could you get someone else in?
We're welcoming to any, in this current market, we always welcome people that have an interest. This unique situation at Gold Terra, having such of a land position, is quite amazing. But what's very important about the potential is that it's close to infrastructures. When we drill, we're $200 per meters. When you look at the Con mine is quite interesting because the Con mine has all the surface lease and mining lease existing. So I don't have to go to a very lengthy process of permitting a new project in a greenfield environment. So there's a lot of positive, and that's what's going to attract people eventually, because the potential is there. I've recognized it. Right. It's just my job to make sure that other people recognize it as well.
It's also important for the community to recognize it around your project, so the community of Yellowknife. How's that going? Have you been there this year? Are you going?
I've been there, and I'm going again the first week of October. I'll be on site, and I have a town hall meeting. So I always, every time I have a chance, at least once a year, I go about 3 times a year. Once a year, I take the time to sit down with the official, with much of the government people, First Nation if they'd like to meet, and of course the town, anybody in town. So we do a town hall. We invite people to listen to the presentation, the project, the progress of the project. We're not going to open a mine tomorrow, but we're more than happy to make sure we communicate with all our stakeholders so they're not taken by surprise.
All right, I'm standing here with Scott Hicks of Lumina Gold Corp. Sir, why are you guys here?
Hey Antonio, thanks for taking the time today. Yeah, I mean, we're here mainly to talk to other corporate development teams and other investors. So this conference is a pretty good mix of kind of, I'd say a third of talking to broker dealers, banks, a third talking to other corporate development teams, and a third talking to investors. So it's a good way to kind of tick off all those boxes in one stop.
What do you say to people who are sitting at home watching their portfolios go from upper left to lower right, and they're like, what are these executives doing, these fancy places, getting cozy? How is that worth my money? How do you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, so for those of your investors who've seen companies get sold, I think any management team they talk to would tell you it's taken years to get to that place. And a lot of these conferences are where you develop the relationships, keep updating those teams, bringing them along your de-risking path, and that just takes time. So fortunately with our stock, it hasn't traded down this year. We've been pretty flat, I'd say, in the market, which is disappointing given gold and copper price performance. But at least we're kind of treading water and holding our own at these levels.
Our conference is the best ROI for your money to get that share price moving back up, though, or is there something else you could do, or is it a combination?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the industry is really struggling with is finding new pockets of capital. So if I was to say something negative about the conference scene, it's that it is a lot of the same faces. So perhaps that's maybe not the best way to entice new capital. But I think it is a great way to maybe keep existing investors in the story and prevent selling. It's also, as I said, a good way to be in touch with the research analysts, the banks, the people who are going to be putting out the notes that get out to the markets. So they are very important. They definitely can't be your only tool in the toolkit, but I think they are valuable.
Talking about money, how much money do you have right now? What are you spending it on this year?
Sure. So, some of your listeners might know we did that $300 million stream with Wheaton Precious Metals. That gave us $48 million ahead of construction. That was a 2-year budget. So we expect our last $6 million from them in December, and that'll take us through our feasibility study, which we expect in Q2 25.
And then in the meantime, what's happening? I mean, is there something? This is, I suppose, the thought of the Lassonde curve. How do you get the attention? What else can you spend money on to get attention and get that share price moving?
Yeah, so from our perspective, and as you know, our strategy is really to sell to a larger producer. It's every de-risking item that we can do. So there's three things that we're focused on right now. One is negotiations with the Ecuadorian government on the royalty rates. So that goes into your investment protection agreement. So we're hoping to have the binding term sheet for that by November at the latest from the Ecuadorian government. The feasibility study, as I mentioned, for Q2 is a huge de-risking item, and all the work that goes into that, the MET testing, the engineering, the extra infill drilling. So that's a big de-risking item for people. And then obviously the last thing is permits. So we're hoping that you could have permits by the end of 2025, early 26, and then the project would be shovel ready. And that really hopefully will unlock a lot of value for shareholders.
Okay. So looking forward to the next news release, or the next 3 news releases. What do you foresee that being?
Yeah, so terms on the royalty with the government will be one. We're working on a phase change at the concession to get it into exploitation phase, which will extend the concession life for 25 years. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done before year end. And then maybe some results out of our metallurgical test program. We've built pilot plants in Lima, and we're doing concentrate production right now out of those pilot plants.
Tell me more about that royalty with the government. Is there a blueprint that you're working off of? Has someone else done a royalty with the government that you're hoping to have a similar one, or what would that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it used to be a flat royalty, and it used to be in the 5 to 8% range, NSR royalty, so on the top line. And really they reduced the rates from 5 to 8 to 3 to 8 in 2018. And then now you negotiate based on different price thresholds. So, SolGold negotiated theirs about a year ago. They're the most recent ones to do it. But we're hoping to achieve better metal threshold prices than what they achieved in their negotiations.
All right, I'm standing here with George Ogilvie of Arizona Sonoran Copper. Sir, what are you doing here? You just published your PEA. What are you hoping to get out of this conference? Why are you here?
Well, we have a lot of buy-side institutional accounts which come to this conference, and also some very high net worth individuals, some of which are actually shareholders of the company. So it's a great opportunity to come to a conference where it's very concentrated, and of course we can meet with existing shareholders in a very short period of time, which is good use of our limited time and resources. And of course, there's a lot of people, following the company and interested in the copper space who aren't currently shareholders. So it's another opportunity to update them on the evolution of the project and how it's advanced and what further opportunities we're going to see further down the line, and hopefully convince them that this is a great entry point to become a new investor or increase their position in Arizona Sonoran.
When I announce that I'm going to a conference, be it Beaver Creek or PDAC or whatever it might be, a lot of people say, why does that even exist? What? And I suppose it's a fair pushback asking about the ROI of conferences. How do you determine that as an issue, or what the ROI is of this or any other conference?
Well, obviously there's a cost to traveling to the conference and the out-of-pocket expenses. As I said, given the fact that there's, at least 1,000 people, institutional accounts, high net worth individuals, shareholders in attendance at this conference. We get to see a lot of people in a 2 to 3 day period that normally we wouldn't be able to see with just virtual calls or even doing a virtual meeting of some sort. So that's important. And also there's the social aspect. We get the chance to interact with our peers, over a wine, over dinner, and just hear sort of what's going on within their companies, what's working for them, how can we use that to our benefit, what challenges do they have that potentially we're seeing the same, and try and learn from one another through a sharing of experiences.
And for you specifically, or for Arizona Sonoran, is there room for M&A talks? Is this where bigger companies come to potentially do something with you?
Yeah, absolutely. There are corporates here who are mid-tier base metal companies. There's a few seniors as well. There's even gold companies here that are interested in the precious metals and obviously the base metals sector. And of the 40 meetings that we have in the next 3 days, I believe that currently we've got 10 meetings with corporate entities.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of people looking at quality projects, quality management teams that potentially have assets that are very, very undervalued, and certainly M&A is on their radar screen at the right time. So it's a great opportunity to discuss potential M&A.
Is that something you're going to be actively pursuing from this stage on out? Because you did the PEA the way you wanted to do it. I believe you're happy. We should have a more in-depth conversation about that, by the way, soon. But is that what you want to do? Is that the route that you want to take, is go and chase M&A from here on out?
Well, look, I mean, we specifically have built the company and grown the project team and the management team with a skill set and the experience to actually, first and foremost, de-risk the project through completing all the technical work and, take it through project financing and ultimately construction and development and build a solid copper mid-tier company in the heartland of the Arizona copper belt. Yeah. So we're definitely in the right jurisdiction, and I would say that's ultimately our goal with this company. But I would also say that probably in the next 1 to 2 years, as we further de-risk, this asset, do higher level of engineering reports, show reserves and financial and economics built from reserves, with an improving macro environment, which I would expect in the next couple of years. I would highly anticipate that probably somebody or several groups are going to approach us with respect to M&A, and provided at that point in time that there's a very robust accretive offer on the table, I think, I've shown from my previous companies that I've worked in, I'm very happy to take an accretive offer to the shareholders and ultimately let them decide if ultimately they want the company sold. But I'd say it's not our primary objective at this juncture in time. And the other reason for that, Antonio, is, I've been in this industry coming up for 35 years now. I'm getting into the twilight of my career, and I've always found that management teams and project teams, if they ultimately believe that they're going to be held accountable to the shareholders of the company for delivering on the plan that's in the definitive feasibility study, which the project financing and the financial investment decision is based upon, you end up with a superior technical document. In a lot of instances where you have companies that are purely marketing their project with the only goal of selling it, sadly, a lot of those technical documents are not even worth the paper they're written on. And either the acquirer, if they don't do the proper due diligence, they obviously are highly embarrassed, or if the company is unable to sell the project and they ultimately have to build it and deliver on that, it ends up being a huge disaster and a black eye on the entire industry, which none of us want to see.
Talking about de-risking from here on out, and within the topic of ROI, and specifically ROI, what's going to relate to share price appreciation, because that's what investors want to see, right? What can you do from here on out? Where do you put money that's high impact?
Well, look, I think for us, we already have 11 billion pounds of contained copper in the ground, and I would say at this type of share price and valuation, we don't want to be now raising money just to put into exploration, because the market is not rewarding us for exploration success after putting 11 billion pounds of copper in the ground. I think for us now it's all about doing the metallurgical programs, particularly to bring Mainspring up to PFS level, drilling out that deposit into measured and indicated ahead of a PFS next year, and then later a definitive feasibility study. And I think on the strategic side, if we can further strengthen our relationship with Newton and Rio Tinto, and even maybe look at bringing in another corporate at Topco to further give the project validation and credibility, I think that could certainly create further competitive tensions down the line, which we've just touched upon. And I think over the next 1 to 2 years, as we deliver on that, the market is going to reward us for that, provided there's improvement as well in the macro environment with respect to the copper supply and demand fundamentals.
So is it metallurgy that we have to look out to over the next couple of months, or what else? What kind of news release are you going to have over the rest of this year?
Yeah, obviously the metallurgical column tests have just started up on Mainspring. There's more columns to start up this month. The same is true of Park Salier, and there's a significant infill drilling program to the indicated category that's just about to start, and that will proceed on for the next 9 months. We've gone out for bids for the next engineering study, which is going to be a pre-feasibility study. We hope to award that next week. And then, of course, that's going to take about 9 months before we can deliver that. So those are the three main tasks that we'll have to deliver on over the course of the next 9 months. And look, we still have some monies from Newton still in our treasury. We're drilling at Cactus West into the primary sulfides. Some of that actually is exploration, and we're happy to do that with the Newton dollars, given it was non-equity, non-dilutive monies that we were able to get our hands on earlier this year. And we've already released 2 press releases announcing that at Cactus West we're finding a lot more primary mineralization that is outside of the existing resource model. And there'll be a press release in the next couple of weeks with another 17 holes, reconfirming that we still continue to see more mineralization there. So I think overall, when we get to a mineral resource estimate update in the middle of next year ahead of the PFS, despite ourselves not doing any exploration with our own dollars, with the Newton monies, I'm expecting that mineral resource estimate to continue to grow.
All right, so I'm standing here with Doug Ramshaw of Minera, Alamos. Sir, what are you even doing here? What are you hoping to get out of this conference?
Well, Beaver Creek for us is a variety of different meetings. Seeing some corporates, we probably see about 20% of our shares represented here with some of our big holders, so it's always good to catch up with them face to face. Bankers, analysts that are covering the stock, and new investors too. So it's a real variety of different meetings, all of which have value either in the immediate or longer term for the company. So it's and then there's a lot of impromptu bumping into people as well, and it's amazing actually the value that can come out of an absolute impromptu bump into someone on a set of stairs.
Yeah. Well, the topic of my coverage of the conference is ROI. Like what works when companies spend money, but you as an investor, you look at your portfolio and it's consistently been going down over the last couple of years, while companies' G&As have kind of stayed constant or even gone up. So how do you determine the ROI of this specific spend?
All right, yeah, any conference we go to, we're going on to Colorado Springs after this at the Denver Gold Show, and I every year I think, do we need to do that one as well? Every year I come back looking at it and going, no, we got value out of that. Value isn't always seen immediately in a share price. I don't expect to come to a conference and think anything that happens at the conference and the meetings is going to lead to an immediacy in the share price. There are people I've met at conferences like Beaver Creek that 2 years later were considerable shareholders. So I think any time you're looking from a company perspective, it's hard to judge ROI on an immediate term. And so the best way you can, I guess, get the value from what we're doing now is to deliver as a company on a go-forward basis. And then you kind of almost look retroactively and go, yeah, a lot of what I was seeding in terms of, market awareness, company awareness at Beaver Creek in 2024 is going to yield in 2026 or 2025. And likewise, stuff we did a couple of years ago here, I see the value kind of come through over time. So there's never an immediacy. I don't think you should be looking for an immediacy on anything you do, but you should be analyzing, is there real genuine value here? Or is the money that we spend better off deployed elsewhere?
How can I analyze that, though, as a retail shareholder, kind of watching from the sidelines? I don't exactly know the inner workings of the corporate world. So how can I know that all the, 150, maybe 200 companies that are here, how do I know they're not wasting their money?
I think there are too many companies here, too many companies in general in the sector, to be honest. So are there a lot of companies here that are getting a tremendous amount of value out of being here? Absolutely. Are there some that probably, are struggling? And, sometimes Beaver Creek is that, you come out of the doldrums in summer, it's like you got to raise money, so you spend 15 grand to be down here in a desperate hope to raise a bit of cash to keep things going and keep the lights on. So it is hard for investors to determine where a particular company is on that spectrum, but it is a spectrum for sure. but I mean, there's a lot of things in our sector which I think are very hard for investors that aren't, trained in mining or geology or whatever to kind of understand. It's a minefield, right? So the best thing you can do is continue just to learn and take in and listen to companies. If a company says it's going to do X, does it actually do that? And because there are a lot of companies that say they're going to do one thing and never do it. So it's a process and it takes years of kind of to figure out what those discerning qualities you need to have to determine which companies are real, which ones aren't, which ones are going to likely give you a risk-adjusted reward that's worth your investment dollars.
And listen to Resource Talks interviews too, I suppose.
Absolutely.
What else is good ROI? And in your case specifically, that's interesting because you have the Mexico discount, as people call it, the dark cloud, if you will.
Yeah.
That it might be overblown, it might not be overblown, but it's showing in the share prices. So what can you put money in that results in returns for shareholders right now?
Yeah, I mean, for us, anyone really. Mexico the last year and a half, it's been tough. Now, I think 2024 is the first time where that patience and resolve that our shareholder base has obviously demonstrated pretty well, given those circumstances. There's an opportunity cost, right? The gold is moving, a lot of companies are starting to move. In the last few years, everyone was kind of on a downtrend. So, things are improving in Mexico. I think not just the presentation I gave yesterday, but some other companies are down in Mexico. We're not presenting it's going to be better because we're wearing rose-colored glasses. There's a lot of nuance to these headlines that have unfortunately kind of created a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt, right? What we're hearing in Mexico is very different than what's being portrayed in the headlines. Being able to articulate that to people here, it was very nice to see a positive response in a few Mexican plays such as ours yesterday that had nothing to do with the gold price move, because there have been days where gold's gone up $40 and Minera has been red. Yesterday I think people are starting to realize, starting to listen, starting to understand that the likelihood of things improving in Mexico is becoming much more increasingly likely. So, and that's a big message I've been articulating this week, right? Like, the first couple of days I felt like, well, you got to address the elephant in the room, Mexico. And it's nice to be able to do that because we are in the position of knowing a lot more of what's going on down in the country than you read on a Reuters headline that sensationalizes something which is very unlikely to come to pass.
A couple of more weeks left of your favorite president.
Yeah, he's gone as of September 30th. So I think a lot of people are just hoping to get through September. I think you're going to see a snapback in October, and we saw glimpses of it yesterday in companies like Discovery Silver and Minera. I think there'll be a snapback in October. I know certainly talking to institutional sales guys who say, look, I can't sell Mexico right now, but in October, there can be some considerable moves in these stocks as people realize that, the sky is not falling.
So what do you do? Does something change in the way you approach your business when the president changes? Are you going to be putting money elsewhere than what you had previously planned? Talk to me more specifically about what you're going to do.
No, I think, we're continuing the permitting process on Cerro de Oro and obviously getting production back the way we wanted at Santana. So I don't think really anything changes. The hard part of our business the last couple of years is, it's been anything we've done has been overshadowed by this political turbulence created. So if that's removed, then what we're doing on the company side doesn't change, but the political environment does. That's a positive. We'll start getting recognition for what is a smart business plan being executed by a good team with a real history of doing well in Mexico. So not much change.
Last question. When you saw the Great Bear resource, did your heart jump?
Oh, the PEA?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a spectacular project. And, it is just the first iteration of that Dixie project. It is going to be much bigger in terms of long mine life from the underground. I absolutely am convinced that they will have tens of millions of ounces, you know, when that mine finally shuts down. It's I'm very excited and happy for the team at Kinross that swung for the fences, and I think they've hit it out the park.
You're not losing sleep for selling that, though.
No,
You're
not
gaining
at all.
sleep.
Our shareholders did exceptionally well, and those who stayed with Kinross have seen, you know, further benefit from that. So, and it was great for the sector. But no, overall, it was phenomenal to be part of something which changed so many people's lives for the better, and that's the great responsibility we have in this sector. If we do things right, we can, yes, impact our own lives in a positive way, but really change other people's lives. That's something I get a tremendous thrill out of. So that was a fantastic PEA Kinross put out.
All right, I'm standing here with Brandon MacDonald, who's a free agent, I suppose, right now. So
unemployed.
That's one way to put it. What are you doing here? I want to talk to you about the ROI of conferences, but what are you doing here?
You know, I think for me it was a little bit of fun. I've been at home for 4 months,
Okay.
you know, with the family, and I go, family time's great, but I kind of wanted to revisit my friends in the industry. I'm formally here as an investor, but I am taking a few investor meetings, but mostly it's reminding people I exist. This is a very good conference for networking, you know, not just the meetings. So it's, you know, I think it's almost a necessity to be here.
Right. What about, let's talk about ROI. I mean, with Fireweek, you used to do a couple of conferences, not too many, so it seemed to me like you were picking them, well, you were paying attention to what you spend money on, especially when it comes onto conferences.
Yeah, I think there's different tiers of conferences maybe, and if you're a newer company, some are more valuable to get your story out. Other ones, like I think you should come here if you're the right size and type of company. If you're big enough to get an invite to the BMO conference in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you go. That's an excellent conference, and you're, you know, rubbing elbows with the CEOs of the biggest mining companies in the world, right? So it's a pretty great place to be. PDAC, I'm actually finding less and less value at PDAC as a CEO. So this last year, I was actually only there for 2 days. I kind of dropped in and, you know, had some meetings and got out. The technical staff spent more time there. But in terms of ROI for a company, it's actually really, I mean, some are definitely a waste of time, and in a bad market, more of them are a waste of time. It's very hard to know in the moment, really. And so 6 months later, you know whether a conference has been successful. Maybe, right? Like, but you certainly generally don't know right away, because like perhaps in a like insane bull market, someone will finish the meeting and call their broker and make a trade.
Yeah.
That does not happen now, ever, right? So you don't know if the people you've met are buying until you follow up with them next time. And it's tough in a market like this when you're managing your budget to know, like, do I just completely ghost to save money? Is you know, you've still got an online presence, which may be very easy and cheap to maintain. Is that enough? I don't know, you know, and it's, and I think you're aware that there's a lot of intel at conferences like this, which is hard to put a dollar value on.
True.
Talking to your peers and finding out which brokerages have traction these days, or which funds are, this week, you know, we got money from this fund and they blew us out. And you thought that fund was good, and you find out that maybe they're not good, right? So, or this fund does really technical due diligence. This fund just invests on a whim, right? So these are things that you don't get unless you're here. And what's the dollar value of that, right? Like I don't know that you can place a dollar value on that. And I think your peers seeing you, okay, like going out and drinking with your peers, is there an ROI for the company in that? I don't know. I think it's good for, you know, your peers who are sometimes your first investors in a bad market.
Sure.
Right? I mean, like I'm in the industry, I'm still sitting on a few boards. I intend to buy shares in some of the companies I met here. I'm not going to move their market, right? But it's something, and I'm probably telling people about it, right? So it's tough. Like there's no great answer. I think some conferences are so good you have to go. Beaver Creek's almost there, or maybe there for a lot of companies. Some are so bad, like don't waste your time. I'm not going to trash any conferences. And then there's a whole gray area in the middle of like, maybe, right? Like maybe you have a good conference, maybe you have one good meeting and that's all you need.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you don't have a good meeting, right? Like, and I think about like, we meet a lot at Deutsche Goldmesse with Kai, and one of the first times I went, I didn't have a lot of meetings. And I was a little bit like, did I waste my money coming here? And then I give my presentation and it was like standing room only. And you realize, oh, that conference, everyone goes to the presentations, right? And whereas you go to like a one-to-one events and nobody goes to the presentation. So you have all your meetings and you go to your presentation as kind of a formality, which they record, and there'll be like 3 guys in the audience, one of which is sleeping, right? And you don't take that personally because nobody goes to the one-to-one events, and it's literally in the name for that, right? So you gotta have to understand, what am I trying to get out of this? What's this conference good for? Do I need to do it twice a year or just once a year, once every second year? There's no clean answer here anyways.
What is good ROI in that case? I mean, some of these companies are spending money drilling, a lot of money, and that's not moving the share price. So maybe it's creating dollar value in the ground or whatever you want to measure it, but it's not moving the share price. So what's good ROI in this market?
Yeah, I don't know that anything is, right? Like and it's tough because some companies, what we would call catch lightning in the bottle. Like they manage to be the story of this bear market, right? And sometimes even a dull star in a black sky looks bright, right? And so everyone's piling into Exco because they got a good drill hit, but it's not clear. You see other companies that have maybe comparable drill hits, and it's like, why did this company get the traction, not them? And it might just be some little butterfly effect thing that maybe it's marketing, but maybe it's just the right influencer on Twitter, and then maybe it's as the market starts to move. Like, because if the market moves on it, people believe it's material, right? Exactly. And I think people believe they rate the significance based on the market reaction rather than gauge their desire to buy based on an actual technical significance, right? So it's that's the thing. So you can drive yourself nuts being like, we're doing everything right. Exco is not doing anything better than me. Why are they $700 million and I'm 70? And sometimes there's no answer, right? And you have to kind of accept that. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. What's next for Brandon MacDonald then in that case? You said you're here as an investor. What happens?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in a rush. I'm in a good position. I don't have to be in a rush. And losing your job's never great. But I think, a little bit later, I think I kind of, once the dust settled on it, I was quite okay with it. And I'm on good terms with everyone involved. And I'm looking for my next thing, but I'm not rushing into it. I don't have to take it for a job.
Okay.
Right? I eventually will need an income, but not, I don't have to like, geez, if I'm not working by October, I'm not going to make rent.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
October 2028 maybe, right?
Okay,
I'm fine, right? So I'm being very choosy. I have some concepts in my mind of what I want to do, but I think it's going to be kind of, I know it when I see it. I'm probably going to think like, I want to advanced stage copper project in a friendly jurisdiction, and then someone's going to drop a nickel project in some batshit crazy country, and I'm going to be like, that's it, that's the one I want to do. I love this project, right? I don't know. So I'm being open-minded. I've had a lot of stuff brought to me. Some's pretty good stuff, but so far nothing's got me over the line.
How are you going to pick that? That's maybe an interesting point from an investment perspective too, because you can afford to pick it now based on your past, and you said you have enough money to bridge over a period, so you don't have to take a job.
Yeah.
How do you pick the right opportunity?
Well, again, I think about the great successes of the market recently in the last 5 years. Great Bear, they bought a project that it turned out to be a lot different than what they thought it was, in a very good way, right? I don't think they conceived the LP fault when they bought the project. Philo was a really maybe sub-economic oxide copper deposit that they made a great discovery there and sold for $1 bajillion, right? And it's you don't always know what you think you know what you're buying, but it might be different for better, for worse. So I'd like to create my own company, but I'm very wary of being so single-mindedly obsessed with doing that I can't get a good project, so I just get a crap project, create a company around it, and then you created this company, you brought investors in, it's bad, and you're desperately trying to save it, and the project may not be good enough to save it, so now you're faced with like maybe a rollback and a new project, and it's just no. So I'm I want to be very careful about my next move for sure.
Have you considered becoming an influencer?
Yeah, I think I am already. For my kids anyways, right?
Yeah. A micro influencer, sub-micro influencer. How does it feel to be a sub-micro influencer in the mining space?
What is that like? How many followers? Like 60, I think, for a sub-micro influencer?
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I think half my followers are fake anyways, so it doesn't matter.
All right, I'm standing here with Alan Sabata of Mogotes Metals. Sir, why are you here?
We have overwhelming interest from investors from all over the world, and this is the place they all come to meet once a year. So it's good to put a face to a name, but also meeting a lot of new investors and companies that are interested in our story. Yeah.
How do you know whether that's really good or beneficial to your shareholders, though? And I suppose I'm asking you the ROI question. What's a good ROI, and how do you know this conference is a good ROI?
The breadth of contacts. We've got all the major mining companies here, mid-tier mining companies here. You know, a lot of them meeting me or the company over the next few days. This will result in share price appreciation, meeting investors like yourself, meeting newsletter writers. The word gets out about the company, and you could see a result in the share price, and that's worth it. That's what we're all here for. We want to get a return on your shares.
Yeah. What do you say to people who say, like, oh, my portfolio is just consistently going down, and yet the executives are going around, you know, on fancy conferences or whatnot, and how am I getting value out of that? Is that only in the share price? Is there something else? Like, is there the potential for a strategic deal or something that you're seeking out?
There's always a potential for a strategic deal. A company like ours, where we are and what we're doing, even more so, I wouldn't disagree that there's a lot of money wasted in the sector, but I don't think conferences is a waste of money. In general, they're a good way to raise awareness of a company. It's a small sector, and there isn't as large of a following as tech or some of the other places that fund managers can deploy money or individual investors can invest. So raising awareness is very important. And a conference generally pays for itself within a week or two, either on the share price or on an investment or a deal. It's quite often on the first day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys just, I think by the time this goes out, you're going to have raised money. You're currently in the process. What is that money going to buy the company? And more specifically, what I really want to know is how is that going to translate into share price appreciation? Because right now there seems to be a disconnect between value and price. So yeah, what are you doing for that?
So we've announced a $2.5 million subscription from a strategic mining company into Mogotes. The money is only part of what's going to be valuable there. The partnership, the long-term support, the technical advice that we're going to get from this mining company are going to be valuable. The money, of course, will go into the exploration program. We're entering our field season in just under a month, and the exploration work going to be full swing. We're going to use that money to advancing our targets, and that will lead to potentially good results for the shareholders.
Are you working with some kind of an internal structure where you say, 70% of the money goes into around 30% goes to G&A, conferences and other stuff, or like what's that ratio for you?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but we're actually very aggressive on the allocation towards exploration. We don't have an office in Toronto or Vancouver. Corporate tends to work remote. There's a lot of focus on putting money into the ground in the field.
Okay.
I haven't got a number for you, but it's significant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you put that money also matters, I suppose, after what you just bought with the geophysical data. That's going to make it easier. What's going to be different for this round of drilling than the previous round of drilling?
Step change in the knowledge that we have on the program. So we also just announced that over approximately $1 million of geophysical data was just acquired from historical archives from Awalé. We have the benefit of additional drilling, trenching, sampling, integrated targeting work that we've spent about a year working on that brings into all of the data from this field season. So we know a lot more. It's a progressive process, so we're going to be able to target our holes better. And you're going to see a lot of that in the presentation that we've just updated on our website, if you'd like to have a look, or yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the main unanswered question is then now, based on, you just drilled, there were some grades there, maybe not exactly what the market is expecting or was expecting. What's the next unanswered question?
It's important to understand we're directly adjacent to what's now a $4.5 billion acquisition by the biggest mining company in the world. We're directly adjacent to it, and it's not just one unanswered question that we have. It's 9 or 10 or 11 unanswered questions that we have, and these are the target areas that we've delineated through our work. And within those target areas, there's a number of next steps for each of them. So it's not a single question, but we've got a list of questions that we're going to ask from this project, and we're hoping that one of them is going to be a discovery.
Well, what's the first one? What's the next news release that I'm going to read from you that answers one of those questions?
It's going to be a release that's talking about the results of our initial surface work on the program, which will be across a number of targets. One of them will be the Rincon target, where we had done some trenching work that outlined a 4-kilometer trend, roughly, of mineralization, in some cases sheeted veins over hundreds of meters. We're going to do some more trenching there, and that'll be one of the components of the surface program. We're going to do the same at the Filan Alinita prospect, which is it's a 4-kilometer high sulfidation epithermal trend with a 4-gram gold rock chip sample, very limited sampling. We're going to do some more sampling on there to kind of flesh out that target. Just an example of a couple of the areas that we're working on early this season. Yeah.
And that targeting, well, that's going to help with targeting, I suppose.
The next step there would be obviously developing them into drill targets and drilling. But as I said, there's 9 areas, so to go through each of them probably be about 45 minutes here. It's a fantastic project for exploration.
I'm happy mentioning timing.
Yeah.
I have 45 minutes. I know you don't, though, because you're meeting a lot of people. But what
2 minutes from now.
2 minutes. 1 minute more. What's the time gonna? When do you go drilling? When are we gonna see some assays based on the new targeting with the new geophysics?
So we're not committing right now to a timeline on the drilling. What we can say is we're deploying to the field season probably in about 4 weeks, in terms of when the weather's conducive to the exploration work, and the drilling will be a consequence of success in the surface program in a given area. So we have rigs and everything available, but just yet we're not going to put an announcement on the timing of that drilling.
But I'm standing here with Mike Berkey of Sitka Gold Corp. Sir, why are you even here?
Beaver Creek, this precious metals summit, it's an invite-only summit, so you get quality companies and quality investors and larger mining companies. So our meetings span a wide range of mining companies to investors to folks like yourself. So it's for people in the junior mining industry to come to Beaver Creek and be on the list to get here is not always easy. So to come here, you just get real quality meetings and meet quality people. So that's why we're here.
How do you quantify quality? Like, what's the ROI on something like this for yourself? Because there's been a lot of complaints recently, like, oh, my portfolio is going down, yet the company I'm invested in is just going around the world, going on conferences. So how do you qualify that? How do you answer to the people who say, what's the ROI on this?
Well, it's always hard to tell any conference you go to the return on investment, but eventually you find out when you have people come back to you that you've met in these types of meetings, and they you find out that they're big investors or have invested in your company. Also, this is a little bit different in having some of the major mining companies here that are always looking for mergers and acquisitions and following your company, so that's a little bit different. So yeah, it's a tough gig to figure out which meetings to go to, because you can travel the world and spend a lot of money. Our company, we try to be very strategic about where we go. We market through the drill hole. That's our strategy, is the more money we can put into drilling at our project, the better we do. We think press releases are the best marketing tool we have. So that's where we focus, but it's still very important to get out and get your face out and meet people face to face. They have to know you, to trust you, to look at your management and understand who you are. So that's the value of these things.
That's what I'm finding myself. It's still very much an in-person business. I used to think you can do everything on Zoom. It's not the same at all, at least not for me. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, we did a Zoom call. It was great, but to meet you in person, it just adds a whole different world to it. So it's super important. It's just like even a mining property. Looking at it online, looking at a presentation that I give to you compared to you coming out and physically visiting the project, it's night and day. So it's a similar analogy to that.
The only drawdown being that you have to actually look at my face. You cannot minimize the window.
You always do that.
You just mentioned M&A. I want to go there. Are you looking for M&A?
Well, I think any junior company is looking how to best give value to your shareholders. And yeah, if somebody wanted to pay a bunch of money for Sitka Gold and give a good return to our shareholders, that's obviously a good outcome for everybody.
Define a bunch of money.
Yeah, well, I mean, a huge premium to your share price, whether it's a double or something. So obviously shareholders are in this business to make money. So if we can deliver on that, I think that that's the ultimate goal of everybody, right? We're really keen. We're explorers. We're actually trying to find a mineral deposit, and that's how we have found a mineral deposit. We want to find an economic one and define that, and that's how we're going to bring our shareholders value.
Let's go there, bringing value to shareholders. You just raised some capital. How are you going to employ that capital so that shareholders see a return? And I'm sorry for continuing on, but it's a value and price are not always the same thing. And so how are you going to move the price?
By marketing through the drill bit. Yeah. I mean, that's where I've said it before. We're not a bank, so we don't raise money to put the money in the bank. We continue exploration. So right now, our main project, RC Gold, up in the Yukon, we're going to drill to the end of October. We're having great drill results so far this year, so we don't want to stop. We want to keep producing those drill results. We've gotten positive response in the markets due to those. As you mentioned, we just did some fundraising. We've raised about over $8.8 million. So that drilling has helped drive that and the interest in financing us to continue to do the same thing. We kind of say what we do and do what we say. We put that money into the ground because that's where it's going to get the best return.
How much of it are you going to put into the ground? That $8 million. What's kind of the split between exploration and G&A?
Our G&A, you've looked at it. It's pretty low. I forget the exact numbers, but we're a pretty lean crew. Our CEO, and we have a very low salaried group. Then we just consult back. So our G&A, I don't know the number offhand, but it's very low compared to most.
Is there like an internal model that you're working on? You're like, okay, we do 70-30 in the ground versus on G&A conferences and whatnot?
No, we just try and minimize the amount of money we spend outside the drill bit. Yeah.
Well, then maybe in absolute terms, how much money are you spending on drilling? What are you budgeting for your drill program?
This year, we're budgeting probably $5 or $6 million bucks. Okay. Our drilling costs are kind of $400 to $500 a meter. We did do some helicopter drilling. We do that, even though we're a road accessible property, there are areas where we'll test with helicopter first before we put the time and effort into making drill roads and stuff, less impact on the environment and the landscape. So we do that just as a corporate strategy to, minimize our impact. So we do use the helicopter. That increases our costs a bit, but because we're road accessible, all the support for a helicopter supported program is lower. So our costs are, just a little over $400 a meter all in. So that's a nice low cost.
Okay. Well, what's the timeline on that drilling that you want to do, and how do you foresee your news flow over the coming months?
Well, we won't spend our entire, bankroll this year, but we're going to go till the end of October. Our news flow is pretty constant. Drill assays are coming back in at fairly good pace. So we'll have news flow right till, obviously end of October. We'll finish drilling, and then probably a couple months after that.
So the next couple of news releases are going to be assays?
Yep.
Okay, good. What happens after that? You're going to have to pause for the season, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that pause, and then, you hit January Roundup and PDAC and all those things. We do have other projects in our portfolio. We have the Alpha Gold and the Cortez Trend in Nevada. We have Burrow Creek, it's in Arizona. It's a gold-silver vein, and then Copper Mine up at Nunavut. That one we won't touch in the winter, obviously, but all our projects are permitted and drill ready. So, we may look at doing some winter work on some of our other projects in the south.
This may sound like an obvious question for most companies out there, but is drilling the right thing to do right now? Why I'm asking you specifically is because of what's happened with Victoria Gold. I believe you did a deal with them kind of on the day that they announced their pad failure. So how's that influencing you? Are you getting questions from investors? Is this something you can do? Is it challenging you in any way?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I mean, nobody likes to see a pad failure on a project, and so that has impacted Yukon explorers. But we're kind of past that initial reaction to it. The Victoria Gold incident is getting figured out. It did impact us in the short term, but as I mentioned, we've been able to raise money. Investors are seeing that the impact of that incident will be perhaps some regulatory change, some things when they figure out exactly what caused the incident. But in the long run, it's not going to change mining in the Yukon. It really doesn't make sense to, the extreme ban heap leach mining or cyanide. There's a number of projects in the pipeline, the Coffee Mine project, Western Copper and Gold, that will use that technology. So it's part of the Yukon's mining future. So I think the intent here is to get the Eagle mine back into production. That's the intent of the work that's going on there. And the long-term intent of mining in the Yukon is going to involve, you know, heap leaching and cyanide, and just figuring out how to, you know, do it so that we don't have incidents like that again.
What about the local communities? That's becoming an increasingly important topic. It always has been, but it's growing in popularity. Have your First Nations or the communities that you're dealing with, have they come and talk to you and saying like, hey, what happened there? Is it, I mean, are we risking anything with you?
Yeah, not directly with us. I mean, there was a call for a pause in mining and exploration in Nachanai Duggan territory that we're in. But, you know, it's been kind of back to business as usual. I think the First Nation is really, they've got experts on their site. They're involved in the whole remediation at Victoria Gold. So as we go further along and figure out that incident and what happened, I think the initial reaction is always, you know, worst case scenario. And what we're seeing is maybe that's not the case. So we really hope that's not the case, and that we can all learn from this and see that, you know, although it's not good, you know, we can remediate something like this, and it's not a disaster. It's not a catastrophe. It's just a really, you know, it's a bad incident, but maybe not as impactful as we thought. And I hope that's the outcome for the First Nations, for the people of Yukon, everybody.
For you to complete that $6 million JUR program, though, you don't have to get any special permits or agreements in place. Everything's fine.
Yep, we're fully permitted for the next 10 years. We've got drill permits and stuff, so that's something that we've gone through. And yeah, no implications there. And the Yukon government has come out and stated clearly that, you know, permits are in place. You know, they can't put a suspension to work. So that's really not in the works. It was just a, you know, initial reaction while people were figuring out the real impact of this Victoria Gold incident.
And that's Mike Berkey of Sitka Gold Corp. Sir, thank you for investing your time with me.
Yeah, thanks for your time.